So let's start with the Chakra Wisdom Oracle, which some of you have heard me talk about. The Oracle really is related to unique fables that, after a near-death experience, these, I can only call them angels, and they came down, they told me these stories, and if I didn't write these stories down, they wouldn't go away, so I wrote them all down. And I just knew it was important. I just knew it was important. And I sent this out to an artist. I found her online, and she said it's going to take me a year. And at that point, I'd been with it 10 years. What did it matter, you know? And I said, it's fine. So she drew it. And I then later, most of you know, I then later went on to work with, Watkins. I had self-published it at one time, and it sold like 10,000 copies off my website. It was just a miracle. And people told me I couldn't do it, you know? And so what I want to remind everybody sitting here tonight is anything is possible. I just want you to take that in when I say that to you. Because the truth is, chances are you're not going to really want the things that are just outside of your frame of reference. Like for me, it would be like, you know, I'm probably not going to become a footballer. It's a good guess that it's something I really don't want to do, you know. But I really got that idea that, you know, we live in a time when anything really is possible. And we think it's the hardest time. And I love that Billy Joel quote that says, they say these aren't the best of times, but they're the only times I've ever known. And so I want to remind you that all of this work is about coming back to you. So when we look at the Seven Chakra, and I really think this is an important part of the evolution from the Oracle to the Tarot, is that I didn't recognize at the time that the value of the chakra really was, and I had just been, I guess I just finished another book that is about beginning chakras, you know, for people, beginner chakra work, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, that's great. And I was commissioned to write this book, and I started writing it, and they wanted me to do the history, okay, all the history. And I started doing it, and I went, wait a minute, there is no history. And I started looking at it, and I realized, wait a minute, we don't practice the chakra that was really chakra. And I started to have that mild panic that everything I was doing was a lie. I had that, I'm not going to fib, I'm going to say I was really panicked. And then I went, wait a minute, but I know it. So there's something here. And what I recognized is that when I started doing the historical work, and it's really funny, the rainbow, it's right up there, Kurt Leland wrote it, fabulous book on the chakra, and he did all the research. And I basically recognized that we as Western society, we took the original chakras. It was the turn of the century. They brought them over, and they took the Sanskrit language and they rewrote it. They interpreted it. Well, you know what happens with interpretations, and particularly when people don't really know the language. So it really isn't, you know, what was brought over was the idea of manifesting, right? The idea of the very Western thing, law of attraction, manifesting. Well, what happened was, and this is the part that got me, because I said, well, when did it really start? When did we really start using the Seven Chakra, you know, as the rainbow colors that we know? And that was when I found out it was Esalen in the 70s in California, and all those guys were dropping acid. And it was self-realization, self-actualization, all of that work, the color, mind-body connection. They put together the 7 rainbow colors, and they put all that together for us. So what I got scared about was I started to realize, wait a minute, it's the Chinese culture that has hundreds, maybe thousands of nadis, right? Chakra. Well, that's what acupuncture is. Acupuncture is an old practiced art. Now we've taken it as westernized, and we now use it as as it applies to our personal, you know, I want to say journey. Now the Oracle deck in and of itself then led to the toolkit. The toolkit, which obviously we don't have tonight. So where's the toolkit? They went, but the toolkit actually has the original fables in it, and that's why it's important to go with that. That's the book. So it's actually a really critical book with, I feel, with the Chakra Wisdom cards, the Chakra Wisdom Oracle, because when we did this, it's like anything else, a publishing program. We took the original fables and we put them into just a legend. So when you read the full fable, it's a game changer. because you start going, oh, I get this, and all of that was developed in workshops with, it was mastermind groups, which was really fun. So the next book that came along was the How to Read the Cards for Yourself and Others. And I'm still just a little kicking myself that I didn't make that more universal. Only because the first third of that book, I think, is some of the best work I've done. Seriously, all about the neutral observer, some of the techniques that we use as readers, what to do when you forget how to read. Like all of a sudden you'll be like, I don't know if this ever happened to you when you're playing with cards. Is anybody who reads cards here? Come on, raise your, I'm not going to call on you. I just want to get a sense if anybody reads cards. Okay, all right. So I'm going to share with you one of the tips that's actually in this book, but it's basically, that moment when you've got the cards out and you're looking at the cards and all of a sudden, nothing. Like you've just shut down. You can't, like you get lost, and it's a scary moment because you're sitting there either with a friend or a client, and all of a sudden there's that feeling like, I've got to do something. I've got to like talk about this. And that's where we cross over from our intuition into advice. And that happens at readers when they start giving advice. They start saying, well, you should try this, you should try this. That is advice. It's not actually reading. So here's what happens. I want you to think of this like the internet. And I'm going to slow this down. So the internet, you're working, and all of a sudden, it goes down. All that work I was doing. It's the same moment. You ever had that happen? Your phone dies, or if you lose your phone, and all that's that same energy of like, what do I do? Well, what you do is you go into yourself, you get super calm, and you go, I'll just wait till it goes back on. And guess what? If you are in that moment, it will come back on. It will just in a few moments, the internet will go back up. You'll be reconnected with spirit, and your readings will just flow. So what I say to people is just wait. Now, if you have a client sitting there with you, if you do read professionally, what you can do too is just say, give me a moment. The other technique I say to people is sometimes I'll just have someone, if the internet has gone down and maybe it's a little uncomfortable for you, I just say, just have your client or the person you're reading tap one of the cards a few times. And then just say to them, can you tell me one word? And they'll say a word to you. It doesn't matter what it is. Because actually, it's the new code to your internet. So I had somebody once say banana. Okay. But then I kind of got this, from there, I just went into the yellow chakra. I went into the third chakra. I started going overthinking. Oh, that's what I'm doing. And the other technique I want to give you is if you've ever felt completely lost in a reading or a moment when you're working with a client, and this is true in anything you do, and you get this feeling like panic, like you're afraid or what have you, 9 times out of 10, that's the feeling the client's having, and you want to fix it. Our brain comes in and says, oh, let me fix this. And then you start giving advice. So you need to come back and say, I'm feeling a little bit anxious right now. Are you feeling that way? And the person almost will always say, oh, yes, that's exactly how I feel. Because you see, the reading is coming through you, not to you. So you have to understand you are the filter all the time. So your life experience, everything in your life is that. So let's start talking about the Chakra Wisdom Tarot. So here's the deal. As I started from the beginning, and my biggest, and I want to, the biggest thing I want to say is that when I created this deck, I really felt that for me, the biggest marginalized people were still women fighting for rights. This was my own, because it was my world, right? So you might write about something that you feel is important, but this was my world of like, I really wanted to see a world. It was kind of like I had a dream, right? And my dream was where everybody just kind of was. And there wasn't any conversation about who people were, but it was more like you just walk around feeling good. You were this elegance. And this is a woman's tarot deck. I'm not going to make any bones about it. It really reads for a woman. It also reads great feminine energy. And I have to be like upfront with all of you and say, I got this deck like 3 weeks ago, right? Remember, I created it, right? But I don't get it until I see the early advanced copy. And you remember, it's almost like years of like, I'm thinking of it this way, and then I'm also thinking of it this way, and then there's this, and it's kind of like cooking stew, right? And then I got to throw some of this in. I hope that tastes good. And then I put this in, and you're just, all of a sudden, this thing comes out of it that is just more than you thought. So let's talk about the 7 chakra, and let's talk about this tarot deck, and let's talk about how it relates to you. So the 7 Western chakra, as we know them, and I'm just splaying the deck a little just to show you the colors, just to give you an idea of the different colors. But I want you to know that when you open the pack, what's in the pack is they are in, I've been shuffling and playing with these, but there are the red, the orange, the yellow. They're actually in chakra order. They're not in tarot order. So you're not going to see like all of the cups, it's not like that. And there are 4 things to know about this deck that are going to be really super important for you to open the deck and get them. First thing is, it's a basic idea of a Rider-Waite deck. So if you know the basic tarot, you know we've got 78 cards. We've got the ace through the king. The only difference is that the page, who is the spiritual messenger in the deck, by the way, she is the spiritual messenger. And so you can call it whatever you want, but when they created original playing card decks, they pulled out the page. If you think about it, just the average, playing card deck, hearts, clubs, the average playing card deck only has Jack, Queen, King. The page was removed because it was meant to take out that spiritual element of the messenger. And if we do a count of those cards, the page is actually the 11th card in the deck, which means, and if you correlate it, and I can go into a lot of stuff, the 12 steps, it's the carrying the message, right? So if we look at it that way, I'm getting truth bumps. So when you look at it that way, it starts to all tie together. And I want to tell you, all the layers you put on this are true. I just want to validate that for you. Like when you see something and it's coming forward to you, it's true. Like, own the truth of what's coming through you may be a really important message for the person next to you. That may be really important. So, okay. So the page was pulled out. In this deck, the page is the princess. So I have her with, in here, this is the cover, is the Page of Swords, Princess of Swords. And for me, I want you to look at the cards in this deck as the inner elegance you carry. It's not what the woman really looks like. It's about who she is. And I was thinking about this because it tied so much into how I felt about a lot of, there will come a day when I judge a person by the character and not the color of their skin. And that for me was so important to this. Like that's important because I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up in the 70s. So for me, seeing that full conversation of this new feminism isn't the same feminism. It's an ownership and a just love of ourselves. And I want to tell you, for the women in the room, we don't fall in love with men. We fall in love with ourselves, and we share it with men if you are straight, right? Now, it's the same energy for gay folks because there'll be a gay, male and female energy, right? It's always that kind of thing when there's that courting time. Women fall in love with ourselves, and then we share it, right? Now, here's something interesting. We don't fall in love with men because if we fall in love with a man, he's our little son. We fall in love with our sons. We fall in love with the little boy in our life because, you see, if we fall in love with a man, he becomes your child. And that's when he starts screaming at you, "You're treating me like a child." And it's because you do. You love him too much. That's where the women who love too much comes from. So here's another piece to that. If we fall in love with ourselves and we share it with other people, then doesn't that empower a man to honor his masculine and enjoy the feminine around him? I'm defining femininity by your femininity, not what's some written thing out there. It's the person who's just comfortable in themselves. And boy, isn't that a nice feeling when you feel it? Just those moments, and we've all had moments. But what if that was sustainable? And here's the difference in sustainability, and it ties into this. When you're operating in your masculine energy as women, you get home and you're exhausted. You can barely sit up. When you're operating in the feminine, you come home and you're relaxed and you're tired, but you're not so exhausted you can't lift your head. Okay, so there's a big difference in energy. So let's take a look. I just want to make sure I'm okay. Good. So I just want to say that one of the things you're going to see here, and I want to share with you each of the 7 chakra, because these are the 4 layers, right? So the first layer you're going to look at in the deck is you're going to see all the red cards are in their own section. There's 11 red cards. There's 11 orange cards. It goes through all of them. The final card in the deck, and it just like, I was so excited because it hit me today. I didn't know. The final card in the deck, of course, is if there's 11, you've got to have 1, which is the world. And the world, actually, is the 8th planet. It's Pluto. So it actually is the biggest, I want to say, ascension moment we can have, right? So, red cards, first chakra, the sun sign. So let's say you're reading somebody. I was reading a couple people today, and this card came up in the same group, right? And it was like, oh, I had an Aries and I had a Gemini. Right, so I knew what that meant. I was like, "Oh, this woman, you're kind of trying to figure out what's next." And the Aries is like running down the hall, and Gemini, should we go this way or this way? So it's really interesting because the sun sign in the first chakra, if you're doing a reading, it's going to matter, but it's not in this book. I'm just telling you. So the 3 elements are the planet, the second element, obviously, the chakra. And then, in fact, we look at where it is. So I'm going to talk about the Fool's Journey in a moment. By the way, I will mention this. It's the only Fool's Journey that is the woman's journey. The first card is a woman, and we have the Hanged Woman. So it is completely, and we see the Fool go through each step. And I think that may be how I want to take you through this. But okay, so the second chakra, moon, right? Moon energy, it's emotions. So the second planet in a chart would be the moon. So when we look at the 2s and the 9s, they're emotional. These are all related to emotions. Then the next one is Mercury cards. So we look at the 3s and the 10s, right? And they're going to be, for us, the idea of if you have a Mercury retrograde, you've got a reversed card. So when your cards are reversed in this deck, think of them as a retrograde planet. So when you look at yellow, you look at, oh, and a Mercury retrograde's going on in the sky, and you see a lot of yellow, you know that person's repeating a lot of stuff, right? So the fourth is going to be Venus, the heart chakra. Makes sense, right? It's the 4th planet. And what is it? Heart chakra, love. And what do I talk about in the Chakra Wisdom Oracle? It's always about the love when it's the 4th chakra. So it makes sense that this would be a Venus card. And then, of course, you remember last year was crazy with so many Mars retrogrades. Okay, so we've got a blue card here, the Justice card. Blue, 5th chakra, communication. Mars is its planet. And guess what? When we look at this as a Mars, this is I talk about manifesting a lot. I talk about manifesting, and it's in this deck too. It's in there when you read the book, you'll get it. But I'm kind of giving you the overview. So when we look at the idea of Mars, remember, if you try to manifest as a woman, you will not sustain what you manifest. If you magnetize, you will sustain it. And magnetizing is a very feminine energy. It's something that we zero in and we pull it right to us. Men manifest. They go out and get it, right? Mars. So this is a Mars card. And then finally, you've got the last 2, which are... okay, hold on. I have to find one. Oh, there we go. Okay. The Queens, check this out. I'm so excited. The Queens are 6th chakra. And of course, right, she's intuitive. She's got that... she's in the 3rd eye region. So Jupiter. She expands the capacity to receive, doesn't she? The female expands everything around her, and she's lucky. So this is also a card of luck. And finally, the 7th chakra is Saturn. So it may not be a bad thing to have a Saturn in that 7th. I love Saturn, by the way. I'm having this like little affair with Saturn. But anyway, it's all about hard work. If you've done the stuff you're supposed to do, you got no problem. I'm going to tell a very brief Saturn story, and then I'm going to take you through the majors, and we're finished. But basically the seventh chakra, Saturn, I had pulled, I forget, a 7 of Swords or something. I thought, oh boy. Sure enough, I may not have paid attention to my taxes as well last year in 2017, and we have a little company called the IRS, and they find you, they just hunt you down. And I got a little bill that was, let me put it this way, it was quite high, and the actual fine was about between $5,000 and $7,000. So you get the idea of the fine. And so of course everybody's like, call a lawyer, do this, do that, you've got to do this. I went, this is Saturn, right? I'm just going to call him. They were like, you're going to call him? I go, yeah. Hey, my name's Tori Hartman. This is what I made a big mistake. I did my taxes wrong, and now I owe you fines. And I was completely wrong, so I don't want to pay the fines. Can you waive them? And the woman says, yes. Do you want to pay them right now, the taxes? I go, I got my card right here. They waived $5,673. I happen to know how much it was, but they waived the fine. And that's what Saturn will do for you. If you face stuff head on, if you go right in and you go, okay, bring it on, I made the mistake, here we go, Saturn will take care of you. Let's talk about the Fool's Journey. 1 through 7 is the Fool meeting her mentors. If you look at the cards, which is really interesting for me, I had a vision of the Fool on a journey, not separate from us. So the first 7 cards, she's meeting her mentors. You see the Fool go to the Magician. The Fool goes and meets the Empress. So she's learning from these people. Fascinating to me, by the time she gets to 7, by the time she gets to that 7th card, she has now met all of her mentors. The next 7, it's living. She gets out into life. It is the Chariot, where she's first, that's a red card. The Chariot starts the second 7. She's not looking at the Chariot. She's kind of looking away. And the interesting thing is she's learning to magnetize. So that's that. Remember, it's red, so it's going to be the sun. So it's about you. So then we get through that second set, which is where she's living, and then we get to the third set of the cards, which is mastery. That is where the Fool masters all of these techniques. And I say mastery, and then people go, but wait a minute, there's the devil. There's the tower. So yeah, because, mastery doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. It just means we handle them. We step up and go, it's like, that's kind of like my little IRS story of like, well, I made a mistake. This is what I did wrong. I may not have filed on time and I didn't care. And, and it worked out okay. And you know what? Here's the deal. With Saturn, it's always going to be okay. No matter what happens to you, it is always going to be okay. That's what I love about this esoteric work, is you recognize that you're here for a reason. And I'm going to say one thing about purpose, because it comes up so much in the work I do. And I will say this. Your purpose is always through your wounding. Always. You will find your purpose through your personal wounding, because it is what you will spend most of your time on. Reverse. She asked about the reversed cards. Yes, there is a thing that I give you keywords for the reversal. However, what I say in the book, but I haven't blasted all over, is the idea that a reversed card is like a retrograde planet. And I love that you said this. I also don't believe in blocked chakras. I think chakras get busy, and I think they're busy. And so if it's that busy, it is a question of calming it and asking yourself, what's going on there? What is that energy about? And then you can pull cards specifically for that chakra if you find it's coming up. So a reversal can also indicate the cliche of a block, but it really means they're busy. So if you look at it that way, it's within your own power to shift that energy and not just believe what somebody tells you. Let me unclear your block. I'm like, don't touch my chakras. I'm okay. I'm good. Great question, by the way. Did you have a question? Anybody else?
I was wondering, you talked about the 7 chakras and the journey, and Pluto is the last card.
Right.
So, just out of curiosity, where do you put the planets in the chakra system?
The chakra system is in order of the astrological chart. So we know it goes Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, actually Uranus, Neptune, all. But we really stop at a certain point. I kind of took it in the order, and then I made a decision for me that the world was Pluto, but it may come up for you that it could be like Neptune or Uranus. It might be, if you're reading, be flexible. I'm glad you brought this up. I mean, I'm giving you a guideline, but that doesn't mean it's the way it should be read. Because 90% of the time, you remember in some of the classes, Gillian, it was like kind of like, are you kidding? Like, you know, somebody had a better idea than I did, and I went, oh, that's so great. So it really is, this is about you and your journey. And you're going to find, as the cards come up, you'll know what they mean to you. So, everybody, thank you.